video we're going to show you how we constructed the aluminium frame that will form the base for the living box of the Bedford. We're also going to show you how we painted the back of the cab and the roof and how we built the first wall. However, we have had a few setbacks over recent weeks, so we're going to talk about those first.
In the last episode, we showed you how we built the steel subframe that would form the foundations of the living box for the Bedford. We welded it, treated it, and attached it to the van. Unfortunately, rust began to appear all over the frame, even seeping through the rust inhibitor we'd put on it. We had no choice but to unbolt the subframe, remove it, grind everything off and start again. But there was another hiccup. The rust treatment, Buzzweld, had to be applied at a temperature of between 15 and 25 degrees, and seeing as it was the middle of winter, that was an impossible task. We ended up hiring a gas heater to keep the garage at a constant temperature while we ground and repainted the entire thing, this time with a much thicker coat. Having learned from our mistakes, we were now ready to start building the box. So from the beginning of this project, we've managed to de-rust the chassis, treat it, and clean out the cab. After servicing the starter motor and replacing the rocker cover gasket, we got the 40-year-old engine running for the first time in 2 years.
Whoa! It lives!
After a storm tore down our workspace, we replaced the prop shaft bearing, then started to cut and weld the steel subframe together.
Look at that!
Which brings us up to today. The first thing we needed to do in order to build the living box was to construct an aluminium frame as the base to give us something to attach the walls to. For this we would be using 3x3 aluminium angle, which we cut down to size.
It's looking big.
Once the lengths were cut, it was time to measure and cut the widths. The angles were cut, but they wouldn't fit together unless we cut the corners into 45-degree angles, much like how you'd make a picture frame. But cutting an angle onto an angle was, well, a bit tricky.
That's cut the wrong way. If you make 45 degrees on 45 degrees, yeah, you should get a 90 degree.
We dry fitted the frame and clamped it all together to hold everything in place. Then we held everything down using self-drilling bolt head screws to drill into the outriggers. Before we could begin constructing the first wall, we needed to paint the areas of the Bedford that would be unreachable once the box was made. In February, this was no easy task, but I managed to pick a rare day of sunshine and low humidity. High humidity will make the paint bloom and look terrible. After searching around for someone who could spray, we ended up deciding to roller on the paint ourselves instead, as we'd done with our LDV. But first, there was lots of prep to do. I sanded off the old paint using an orbital sander, first with 80 grit, then with 500 grit for a smooth surface. Now that the van had been sanded, I needed to mask off the areas I didn't want to get paint on. This would have probably been easier had it not been a windy day. Then I applied a coat of standard white primer, although the wind sort of took this too. I mean, a bit of it stuck to the van. Then I sanded down the primer again with 500 grit. Finally, it was time to paint. I was using synthetic coach paint, thinned down with a third white spirit, and high-density foam gloss rollers. Finally, we were on to part of the build we've been looking forward to for months, building the first wall. I started by taking an aluminium sheet and measuring it to size, using our aluminium angle frame as a guide. We cut the aluminium down using a sheet metal cutter. Then it was time to figure out where the window would be placed, so that it lines up with the window of the cab. We did this by creating a data line, a cross pinpointing the centre of the wall. From this we were able to use the window's measurements to draw out its exact location. To make a template for the rounded corners of the window, we traced around one of them onto a sheet of aluminium, cut it out, then used this to trace the shape onto the wall. Once we'd cut the hole and dry fitted the window, we needed to build a support frame to attach it to. We did this using 2x1 aluminium. We flipped it over, drilled some holes, and applied the first of many pop rivets to attach the uprights to the wall. Then we flipped it over again and measured the widths, cut them, and added them too. We trimmed the window frame down to ensure it fits snugly inside. The final step was to attach the aluminium angle frame to the wall using polyurethane adhesive and pop rivets.
Thanks for watching, and we hope you'll join us through these next very exciting stages of the build. If you want to check out any of the tools we've used in this video, then hit up the links in the description below.